that we'll just open it as a sacred circle.
Meditation, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Does he have COVID by any chance?
No, he doesnn't have
Something
COVID.
else. Oh, okay.
Yeah, something else that come out. I believe he posted it publicly, so it is online. That is something related to kidney stones. So,
okay. Oh, that's painful. Yeah.
yeah. So he's been through a difficult healing journey with that, and it's taken a little longer than he expected.
Huh.
And so,
You should talk about that. Perfect topic, right?
yeah, because it is physical healing, but I think it kind of brought forward that sometimes when we're put on a healing journey, the physical can take, it's part of that, it's either physical, mental, emotional, whatever.
Of course.
All right, stand by. Here we go.
Okay.
and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Long ago, before this day's confusion did begin, throughout the stars did we go wandering. Distance was no barrier, and time it had no hope. Free to come and free to go. Free to come and free to go. Open up the book of stars. Open up
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Karmic Evolution's Astrologically Speaking. I'm your host, Sherry Horn Hassan of Karmic Evolution Astrology, coming to you on March 18th, 2021 from Contact Talk Radio. Just a quick reminder that the show aims to bring you the truth about astrology and your soul's karmic evolution. Today, I'm pleased to announce that my guest is once again professional astrologer SARRRAH Christensen, who I will introduce properly in just a few minutes. But first, my usual housekeeping stuff and a new announcement. So I'll save that for the last one. But just a reminder, you can check out all my posts on my Karmic Evolution Facebook page. If you would like to sign up for my newsletter and receive these same posts that way, by all means, please send me an email at Sherry, SHERI, at karmicevolution.com, or you can scroll down on the Facebook page on the left-hand side until you hit join email list. Just fill it out, and as my dad used to say, it's as simple as that. You can also go to karmicevolution.com to the upper right-hand corner, which says radio show. Click on that page, and when you scroll down the page, you can access any shows you either might have missed or to which you would like to listen another time. And for those who are interested, I am still offering my 1-hour Karmic Evolution Natal Insight reading at the discounted rate of $99. So for anyone who's interested in learning more about their soul's purpose and true mission in this lifetime, or who's experiencing chaos and would like to move towards clarity in any major areas of your life, relationships, career, finances, health, and to heal old karmic wounds in order to co-create your own future happiness and success and awaken to your true potential and highest destiny in this lifetime, I again am offering the 1-hour $99 discounted Karmic Evolution Natal Insight reading for those who would like to pursue learning more about their karma, their psychological patterns and how they manifest them in this lifetime, and the archetypes and archetypal ranges of energies into which their soul chose to be born. Shoot me an email. Again, that's Sherry, SHERI, at karmicevolution.com, and book your reading today. At almost half the regular price, conscious awareness has never been so easy or so affordable. Now, finally, I have a quick announcement to make. which is that I am planning on starting next week on March 25th, dedicating the last Thursday of every month to teaching the truth about astrology and your soul's karmic evolution through the planets and the signs. So I'll begin next week with an analysis of the truth about Aries and its ruling planet Mars. This will be a show filled with basic information, but also some things that you may not have learned if you've already studied Astrology 101. And that includes both the planet's archetypal and mythological story, its potential psychological manifestations based on, where it's situated, etc. Anything to do with Mars, the planet Mars, the planets in your chart that you were born while they were transiting through the sign of Mars, through the first house, which is the naturally ruled Mars house in everyone's chart. All of that, but also the role that this archetypal energy may play in any evolutionary journey it calls our soul to make on a karmic level. Such insight is designed to help those either new to astrology or who may have studied basic astrology, or even someone who's been studying and practicing for a while, to put it all together in a simple, direct, basic, but more profound way. So whether you're an astrology enthusiast, astrology student, or someone more astrologically advanced, I invite you to join me on Facebook Live on the fourth Tuesday of every month. I'm sorry, that's not going to be the fourth Tuesday. It's going to be the last. I said Tuesday. Okay, let me slow down. I invite you to join me on Facebook Live on the last Thursday of every month, and starting next week on March 25th. And hopefully these shows will allow you to add more tools to your toolbox of astrological understanding. So look for the show's announcement again on my newsletter, on my Facebook page. And if you can't make it live, no worries. As always, it will be archived. I'm going to start a Karmic Evolution YouTube channel, so stay tuned, and I'll direct you to exactly where you can find these shows after the fact. So I hope you'll join me for this look at the planets and zodiacal signs, again, starting with the truth about Aries and your soul's karmic evolution on March 25th. Okay, so now let's dive into this week's astro news you can use. So the monthly lunar cycle's waxing right now, since the March 13th Pisces new moon calls us still to find ways to enter that blissfully safe and secure pre-birth phase when gestation was taking place in our mother's womb, and we wanted for nothing because all of our needs were automatically met. Meanwhile, that Pisces new moon asks us to remember that primordial phase of gestation prior to birth, when everything was taken care of. We had no worries, we had no fears, we had no anger, we had no prejudices, no biases, none of that, so that we may recreate that state in our lives now. Now, that's not for the purpose of escaping into some other realm through some form of addictive behavior, but rather as a means through which we may create an environment of connection to source energy, where once we bonded with Mother, our eternal life giver, now we bond with the universe and its unconditional, all-loving energies that remind us we are divinely connected always. And we do this through meditation, through prayer, through mindfulness, and any other creative endeavors that put us in a mindful or meditative state where we're no longer stuck in the emotions of the past nor anxious about the future. Rather, we exist in this realm to which all the goodness of the universe reinforces us with our desire to swim back out into love and live life to its fullest. So my Pisces new moon blog post and newsletter, which went out a bit late last week, is something you might want to check out now for more details. And if so, just go to my Karmic Evolution Facebook page or shoot me an email and I'll add you to my Conversations About Consciousness newsletter list and forward to you that last issue. But now this Pisces new moon, we're in the waxing phase, prepares us through the gestational process that's been taking place collectively and personally, metaphorically, right? for the sun's entrance into Mars-ruled Aries on March 20th. Now, since Aries is the first sign of the zodiac and the natural ruler, as I mentioned, of both the ascendant and the first house in everyone's chart, at least according to Western tropical astrology, which also pegs the sun's movement to Aries as synonymous with the spring equinox, or the beginning of the season of spring in the northern hemisphere, it represents a time of birth. Those two Piscean fish yoked together but swimming in different directions, one attempting to get back into the womb and the other attempting to go out towards life. Well, right now, as the seasons shift and as when the sun moves into Aries, they have no choice. If they have the will, they will be born into physical incarnate bodies where they have no choice but to begin to work on learning about and fulfilling their individual karmic destinies. So things begin to move forward now as it's planting time again in the northern hemisphere. Think about, Aries, the ram, right? The birth of the lambs and the rams. I don't know if a lamb is a baby ram or it's a baby sheep. I don't know, but you get my point. So the question and the planting, anybody who's a gardener, anyone who's a farmer, anyone who's, familiar with the natural cycles of Earth, again, especially in the northern hemisphere, which is where Western tropical astrology comes from, the Greeks and the Romans, and even the Mesopotamians. But the question for all of us becomes, what have we been gestating, not only this past month, but this past year? And to what is it that we're ready to give birth now? Now, we all know this past year has been fraught with all kinds of unusual situations, both related to our living space, related to the ways that we're allowed to merge with others and all that stuff. And so I think this particular ingress of the sun into Aries this particular year is probably going to give more impetus to our desires. I will talk a lot more about the archetype, like I said, of Mars and Aries next. It's the signature of birth. So we want to know now that we can birth something, but it's not like it has to be an overnight thing. But it's clear that the desire to move forward, the desire to open up after a world that's been in pandemic lockdown for so long, is pretty active in our psyches right now. And that's because in part it's in sync with the natural rhythm. So where Pisces archetypal energy is happy to hang out in the watery womb, Aries energy makes us want to spring out into life, feel the sun on our face, get back to nature, to physical outdoor activity, and just in general to feeling like we are free. And Aries is above all a proactive archetypal energy that makes birth possible. It provides us with the instinct to know how to proceed, not through the mental or intellectual processes necessarily, but rather through simply taking action. Think of labor pains and the segue between the womb and the actual external physical world. It's Aries at the natural ascendant and as the rule of the first house of appearances, among other things, right? We're going to go from being invisible. I wonder what he looks like. All we have is a sonogram, right? Again, for those who don't or haven't had children, that's, you're still part of the club. We're still talking metaphorically as well. But it's those, like I said, labor pains and those signs that, that provide the impetus or the push for us to signal to mom, hey, I want out now, right? So Venus follows the sun into Aries on March 21st, which is a day later after the spring equinox, adding a bit of a zing to how we relate to others and what we truly value between then and April 14th, when she moves on to calmer Taurian ground. Now, however, Venus in Aries becomes the archer in love and life, pursuing what she wants when she wants it. So we may prove more aggressive in fulfilling our ego's desires, as when traveling through Mars-ruled Aries, Venus learns she has desires of her own, rather than simple serenity and harmony and partnership. And of course, Venus is the ruler of both Libra and Taurus. So Taurus is the more physical side of relationships, and Libra the more social side. Now, also on March 21st, Mercury in Pisces, where the messenger god has been since March 15th, and where he'll remain until April 3rd, which is, only a short time before he moves into more aggressive Aries, he's going to sextile Uranus. Mercury in Pisces will sextile Uranus and Taurus on March 21st, also providing us all opportunities to find new solutions to old problems. If we use the power of Mercury in Pisces to go to that meditative space, we may well allow Uranian revelations to pierce our preconceived notion of old dilemmas now. Mars in Gemini also perfects his trine to Saturn in Aquarius on March 21st as well. Between now and then, we should be managing the patience and willingness to work slowly but steadily toward our goals by applying control and attention to detail. These goals may be modest or they may be larger, but this transit helps us to define them well and allow this time to set the stage for longer term plans and projects. Remember, we're being born into Aries now, or in a couple days, right? So when Mercury, again, still in Pisces, calls us during this period to think visually and to utilize, again, meditative and visualization techniques to help us get out our messages. And we do that in any way that feels right for us. Do it through writing, we do it through artwork, through music, through dance, all kinds of different things. So Mercury in Pisces will square Mars in Gemini March 23rd, and we may find ourselves a little touchy or irritable. So Mercury in Pisces can lack the ability to communicate directly. A lot of times, Pisces is indirect, vague, and, for those who like to bottom line things, it can be a little bit annoying. It's not a just the facts, ma'am answerer, So when confronted with Mars, Mercury can find, itself either identifying too strongly with our own ego's desires or having to push back against that of others who may confront us. And this aspect can be a harbinger of arguments if we let it. This can force some of us to gain greater clarity about what it is we have to say, or it can cause us to become aggravated with those who seem vague, like I said, and unclear in their messaging. Think about talking to your kid, right? Or a small child. It's like, the who, what, where, how, when doesn't really work with them, So you got to really have a lot of patience to get the information, to get the actual story. Funny, that reminds me, because my kid, who is an Aries sun, when he was young, he used to report to me. He was a Virgo rising. He used to report to me like after preschool. If you asked him what he did, he'd tell me what everyone else did. This one got in trouble. That one made a picture. That one, asked him a question. Blah blah blah. And if he described something like a fight between two kids or something, I had to begin to learn that. And he's got Venus in Pisces. I had to learn to ask him, okay, so what were you doing? So he would describe to me what everyone else was doing because it was a nice tale to tell. But then I would find out that he also was doing it. But he wouldn't offer up that information initially, So Pisces can be guilty of the sin of omission. Anyway, so that can cause us to get a little pissy, depending on which side we're on. We don't want to be pushed to give information that we don't feel like giving, or we don't want we have to push others to give us the information because it's like, I can't figure it out if you don't give me the information. Now, in addition, one of the stereotypical things, unfortunately, when Mercury squares Mars, is that Mercury represents transportation. It's local. It's near neighborhood and siblings and communication, of course. But because it has a connotation to local transportation, when it squares Mars, and particularly the fact that Mars is in Mercury-ruled Gemini, we're cautioned to be wary about driving too fast or getting in the path of others whose movements become unexpectedly sudden. You know, you're driving and suddenly someone shifts lanes in front of you. So it pays now to be aware as this energy waxes. But the bottom line here is that suppressed anger can rise to the surface now. And that's actually the cause of not only incidents perhaps when driving, but also accidents while walking, exercising, or acting impulsively and or impatiently. So it's the suddenness that's the issue here. And since Mars Aries energy also represents things like fire, fever, cuts, burns, knives, or other sharp steel instruments, it's best to move slowly and thoughtfully now rather than quickly. It's sort of like, you know, when you're in the rush, that's when you fall down the stairs. You know, when you're in the rush, that's when you cut your finger because you're trying to quickly make that salad or whatever. So being aware, but the bottom line again is that it's not always what happens to us, but it's rather what we make of it afterwards. So if something sudden does occur that's seemingly negative, it's best to analyze it afterward and to see where it might have been caused by repressed energies of some kind, whether those energies are based on repressed anger or pure impatient or impetuous ego gratification. The Aries is, and I'll go into this next week too, because Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars' mission in astrological terms is to support the sun. And so the sun is our ego. So because Mars is our will, it becomes a situation where our actions may be driven purely by ego gratification, which is I want what I want and I want it now. So it behooves us all to kind of meditate on what it is we're really angry about, or if we don't like the word angry, we're a little pissy about, or we're not happy about, or whatever, or we'd like to see happen differently, and or what we think we need so badly that we had to move so quickly in the first place. And in turn, this helps us to make lemonade out of any lemons that come our way. All right, so now it's time to introduce my guest. Professional astrologer SARRRAH Christensen holds a master level certification from Stephen Forrest's apprenticeship program in evolutionary astrology and incorporates traditional astrology into her work as well. Guided to astrology through a series of dreams, SARRRAH began her deep dive into astrology in 2010, which brought new levels of healing to the deepest wounds of sexual abuse. SARRRAH seeks now to share the gift of healing available through the reflection and study of astrology. SARRRAH's blog series, Up the Mountain, Saturn Return in Capricorn, followed the real-world challenges of 18 individuals during their Saturn returns between 2017 and 2020, and included insights into their early years for deeper context. Also, one of the early volunteer admins for the EA Zoom meetings, SARRRAH's created more than 25 videos on various subjects for the astrological community since 2016. Her latest project is as the creator and host for the Astrology for Healing Giving event 2021, scheduled for March, and I believe to start this Saturday on March 20th. SARRRAH serves others with deep compassion for healing and mindfulness through her astrology readings, tutoring, webinars, and a bi-monthly newsletter via her website at onesagesview.com. Hey, SARRRAH, how are you today?
I'm good. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, honey. It's nice to have you back. I'm so glad that you were available.
Yes, I am available.
You know, I thought of another question I want to ask you, but I'm gonna insert it. It asked one of the questions that I formally had written a slightly different way. But first, I see in your bio, you know, that you were guided to astrology through a series of dreams. But I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about that, and how you discovered it to be a healing modality.
Sure. So in 2007, 2008, around that period of time, I was having multiple dreams, and I just wrote them down in my dream journal. And this was about a year or so after my daughter was born. My daughter was born in the fall of '06. And so new mother, getting dreams, don't have a lot of time to give to it.
Right, right.
So, yeah, so it was about a year after having written down the dreams that it started to kind of pull on my inner world to understand what is this. And through a series of experiences in life that kind of took me back into the professional world at the same time, it started landing that there was more in those dreams than just, oh, that's the dream, and then on to the day, you know? So it kind of opened that window. And one of the dream series was around Pluto. And at the time, I was not an astrologer when these came in. And it took another year for some experiences that were very psychic in kind of an opening. Excuse me. And this was at my Uranus opposition, by the way. So it was a pretty big.
I just want to tell people who don't know that the Uranus opposition is basically a midlife transit. So now we know.
Yes.
You know, basically between like 38 and 40, I would say 44, 45, depending on, you know, the person's chart. But anyway.
Yes.
Go on.
So, yeah. And to add to that awareness for people who are just kind of dipping into astrology, it depends on where things are in your natal chart, how you might experience something. And for me, those dreams, the Uranus that was opposing my own Uranus was in the 12th house, where dreams kind of things start emerging.
Revelations. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what, you know, kind of opened things up. And it was opening up all the things you were talking earlier about: repression of anger, repression, suppression. And absolutely, that was a big part of my storyline of what I would not deal with from my past, because I thought, oh, I'm just going to go to work, I'm going to make my life. But the things were emerging that I had to take care of. I had to really bring them back up. They're going to come back up. and start working through it. It feels like complete chaos when it bursts sometimes. At other times it's more of a experiences, and then you know, can look back on it. That's what is wonderful about astrology, is it's healing from a reflective tool. Once you understand the archetypes at play, and then you go from there. I hope that gives you some insight into how I opened up to astrology.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you don't mind my asking.
Sure.
One of the subjects that's interested me since I started my study of astrology circa 2001 is how many astrologers, and this isn't true for all, but come to it through the psychic realm, which I think it seems pretty clear: metaphysical, psychic, spiritual, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, the dreams are certainly metaphysical and potentially psychic. Did you recognize that you had those metaphysical, intuitive abilities or aptitudes prior to those dreams? Or was the Uranus opposite Uranus period your awakening to that?
I recognized them in small doses, meaning I had life experiences that weren't explained by, you know, your general everyday scientific kind of stuff. It was, you know, having a psychic moment, having a premonition, and then it manifesting in a very quick and kind of manner. So I had probably less than a half a dozen stories in my life of experiences where I'd had that intuitive hit, and it gave me information to either protect myself or something was going to happen, those kinds of things. But I really didn't know when they would come. They just fell in.
Right.
You know, they just dropped in.
And did you trust them at the time?
Say again?
Did you trust them at the time?
Yeah, because I grew up in a organized religion, and so I was spiritual from that. And so, but I think it unnerved me when there was more of the premonition piece that was, you know, that came in versus something else, you know. So Yeah, because I mean, I had the premonition right before a car accident scenario, and then I also had the awareness, and I thought I would, I was, joking to myself, like, yeah, right. But it truly happened was I won a car, and like 5 minutes before I won the car, I was like, is the phrase in my mind of the person who was the announcer what they said exactly? And so I was just,
That's so cool. That's a rebound, right? Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah. I'm sorry to be personal. I'm just asking you because I find that so many. One of the biggest missions, I think, in my world as an astrologer, is to help people discern where their intuition lies and to help strengthen their trust in it.
oh yeah,
So it
sure,
just occurs to me that that's something that's, very palpable for you and a
sure,
gift that you have to bring to those for whom you do readings.
sure,
Um, but let me ask you about your upcoming event because I really wanted to highlight that on this show. And
sure.
it's astrology. I have two different names here. Astrology for Healing Giving event. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So tell us about it. What are some of the details, and what is it that a person who signs up for the event can hope to achieve? Because it's not a one-time thing, right?
Right. It's a series of talks that slow it down. So there's one talk on each weekend over several weekends this spring. We
Mm-hmm.
kick off on March 20th. So it's Astrology for Healing 2021. It's the event. And interesting. It's the creation of this thing is taking me in a direction of the support of someone who has fallen ill, of one of the speakers. And so we have created space for the first event to be a sacred circle, to create space, because oftentimes when we begin a healing journey consciously, we are creating space to do that. And so this is the cosmic call. It's the invitation to create space and to be supportive and understand the intention of what we're going into. Samuel Reynolds was scheduled to be this first speaker, but he will be scheduled at a future date. So on March 20th, we have a special guest speaker. Janice Lynch is going to be guiding us through a guided meditation as we open this, and also an opportunity to understand kind of the energies of the moment as we enter into the spring equinox and what it means after coming off of COVID in the last year, and how people are experiencing that.
Mm-hmm.
Then the following week, we have Gemini Britt coming in to talk to us about the Temple of the Sky. That starts at 9 a.m. on March 27th. And all of the I would say students of astrology, someone who's in their first year studying, are going to, really grow from this if they participate, because it brings in a lot of information that they're also learning at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And those who are intermediate, I think anybody in that range, from a student in their first year of astrology to an intermediate and beyond, will enjoy this event for what it has to share, and bring in the focus of application of astrology for healing. So what can someone walk away with, right, is a view of how you sit in space as an individual. And so there's self-awareness is number one. And the second one is mindfulness. And then I would think a third follow-up to that is the perceptions that someone may bring, that they first may have learned about astrology, and yet it's much more broad, or how different disciplines take a look at something and how it can be perceived and the lens for that. And it's important about how that can be a part of the healing process, is your perception of something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's in the mix. So it's physical, it's mental, it's emotional, spiritual. So, kind of when people think of mind, body, spirit, this is within that. And astrology as a tool, but it's also a spiritual, something we can do daily as part of our own spirituality. So it depends on how you want to apply it, if that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is. I noticed in your bio too that because you and I went through the same program with Stephen Forrest. I was actually the first class of master certifications or whatever, back in 2016. I think it was January 2016. But that you combine it with traditional, and I know that some of your presenters are traditional astrologers. Sam Reynolds is. I know Michael Bartlett has a traditional bent, and I don't know about the others, but
Michael Bartlett, I think, has a more from a soul astrology perspective. I don't know in terms of what houses he uses, but yeah.
I know him pretty. He uses not equal houses. He uses whole sign houses. Okay. And he's I know him pretty well. He's got, he'll look at Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and stuff like that pretty exclusively. But my question for you about that, because you sounds like you roll similarly, and yeah, Michael Bartlett is also more of the Alice Bailey kind of school, the esoteric,
Esoteric is where I picked up on him. Yeah.
Right. But what I'm curious about is the combination of the evolutionary and the traditional. And one of the reasons I ask you, Sarah, is because I noticed this a lot with a lot of astrologers. And if they're teaching, I find it interesting that, for example, if you're new to astrology or you studied, say, evolutionary or psychological astrology, and then someone introduces the concept from traditional astrology of bad houses, it's like, why introduce that concept if you didn't know it before and then try to disabuse someone of the fact that there are no bad houses?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering how you find that they fit together for you in terms of how you do your readings and stuff like that. And this may be just a pet peeve of mine, but it is something I'm interested in. So I don't.
Let me tell you why I think it's important to have a dialogue around it. The more astrology enters the general culture, because you don't know where someone's coming from with the astrology. And for example, my practice is evolutionary astrology. 98% of my work is evolutionary. I have studied extensively both evolutionary and traditional, but traditional to me is having a, what do you call it? A renaissance. It's come back. But I think it also misses out on the fact that we've gone through the outer planets being brought into the consciousness of the collective of all of us. And so we're varying degrees of our awareness and how we consciously interact with life, right? So to me, I think it's important because I will use a technique if I think it highlights something only. I don't embody the whole thing as this is how it is and that's your fate and that's it. Now, there is a structure that both any discipline has to work within, symbolism, but everything is how you language it. And I fall under the philosophy of Stephen Forrest's astrology, and that's why he was my teacher, how I picked him, why I've read all of his books. And it's about self-awareness. Astrology is not saying you can't do X, Y, or Z, but there are things within your astrology about your kind of mission in life, what is meaningful to you, and things that you are trying to evolve from your experience and wake up to. And I completely am aligned with that.
Right.
Where I am in this journey. So everything guided me that way, and I trust my inner guide to that, and that's where I stem from. So bringing up the topic of like the bad houses is, if someone's captured into that and go, ooh, what does that mean? Because I've heard of that, and maybe I'm in pop astrology where the 8th house is perceived this or that, or 12th house is perceived this or that. It doesn't look at the whole thing. And I think Sam's talk, as he's prepared it, is to try to break some of those things down that may have been picked up from what I call the Saturnian old paradigm.
Right.
That we have gone beyond in terms of our understanding from Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. Not that we control those things, but we can be aware of what they're doing and how they're operating, if that makes any sense.
So I just want to tell everyone, for those who don't know, who are listening, traditional astrology is what existed before the discovery of the outer planets. And so, and also really pretty much the Copernican revolution of the fact that the, Earth revolves around the sun rather than the other way around in the 15 and 1600s. But I was at the Faculty of Astrology in the summer of 2007 and met astrologers who are renowned, like John Frawley and I can't remember the other guy's name who was teaching, but there was also a Bernard Eccles, who I know is far better known in Britain and the UK than here. And I would take a lecture with them because I was still kind of like, oh, I don't know. And they would never mention the outer planets. So I was like, what the heck is going on? I met Rob Hand there too, and even he didn't always talk about them, So I was like, wow, that was only like 13, 14 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that traditional astrology was not used traditionally for individuals unless you were the king or, somebody famous or rich or, a landowner or whatever. So it's just interesting to marry the two and sort of skip over the psychological or, some of the other stuff. But anyway, how can a person identify, in your opinion, what kind of healing they might achieve either by consulting an astrologer such as you or studying astrology themselves? And how can they tell, other than through their own intuition as you were guided, if this modality is one that will truly help them heal?
That's a big question. Because you only come to it, I guess, from for me to answer that question, all I have is my personal experience. I can't speak to anyone else's personal experience because it's so individualized, right? So you could have a friend that it pops up into your awareness because you have a friend, or you were given a gift, or it comes in different ways. And to me, those are just the soul kind of knocking on the door of, hello, I want to show you something. And free will, do you pick it up or not? There's opportunity, but if someone picks it up or not, that's all depending on where they are in that moment. And but when they do pick it up, then what's their lens for where they are in that moment? I think when you're going through crisis, you're a little bit more raw and open, I need to understand where I am exactly. I don't know how many people I've heard that story. They call out to the heavens, like, why am I here? What am I doing here? What is this all about? Because the crisis is so huge in your awareness. So you're trying to get your feet back on the ground to understand and make sense of it with some clarity, right? But clarity comes in phases, so you get
absolutely,
you get turned over all the time in chaos and then back up again, and that's life. You know?
2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Yeah, absolutely. I worked with about 160 different authors on short memoir stories of transformation by women, and I would say that the majority of them reveal exactly, and in my life as well, I could testify to that most people make changes and find their way to healing modalities during and following crisis periods. And as we know, as astrologers, there are certain classic crisis periods, of which midlife is just one, but a big one that can move people in that direction. I also remember hearing someone say that astrologers are like therapists of yore. Now we have coaches and stuff. A lot of them were formerly in the psychiatric world, but that people turn to them in times of crisis.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, right? It's cool. So before I let you go, I want to ask you if there's anything else you can tell us about your upcoming event. You mentioned the sessions with Sam. You mentioned Michael. I'm not sure. Is he doing something, I think, on the 12th house? And something about
Michael's
astrology.
going to be on May 15th, and he's talking about the 12th house and the moon. So either if you have it in the 12th house natally, or as the secondary progressed moon has a bit of time in the 12th house. We have on, I think I mentioned Gemini Brett, March 27th, Temple of the Sky. He's a very fun storyteller to listen to. I enjoy listening to him. He just kind of
interesting guy, yeah.
And then later on in April, on Saturday, April 10th, we have Juliana McCarthy, who's an astrologer who wrote the book The Stars Within You, A Modern Guide to Astrology. And she's going to be speaking about the Saturn and Uranus squares that are throughout this year, and kind of taking the spin on how is that kind of forcing us into maturity and working with just liberating ourselves from it's kind of a combination between maturity and liberation. So she's going to be focusing on that in April. After her is Tamira Mcgillivray. I have a hard time saying her last name, Mcgillivray. And Tamara is one of the teachers at Kepler College. So if people have been there, you would know her from there and her own practice. And she's going to be talking about creating sacred space in your local space, like how you can use astrology for local space. And that's on April 17th at 9 a.m. And then Marie O'Neill is also an evolutionary astrologer and esoteric as well, from Stephen Forrest's discipline. And she'll be talking about the music of Saturn and Neptune aspects and how they work together in the healing journey. So she's talking on Saturday, May 1st at 9 a.m. And again, I already mentioned Michael. And then I close out the program, the event on Saturday, May 22nd. And I'm going to be talking about Mercury and Mercury in your progressed chart and how that is a very long cycle and the healing perceptions that can come from that, and thought and communication and just the journey of that whole thing. So
that's so interesting. I remember not that long ago, I think I downloaded one of Stephen Forrest's talks on that, and I have to say I was looking at my son's chart and recognizing that Mercury's going to go, progressed Mercury will go from his 9th house across his midheaven, go into his 10th, but just barely, and then station retrograde. And so it'll go back into his 9th, and it's just so fascinating to me. It's not going to happen soon. It'll be in a couple of years. He's in his mid-20s, just about to turn 26. So I have to go back, but that would be a really interesting session for people to attend, because it's just so fascinating how that, because I think you had said in your advert that almost everyone will experience it because the Mercury retrograde periods are short, and by progression, it's generally not exactly, because Mercury moves quickly, 1 degree a year. So it's going to be retrograde for like 20 years, right? And so it's a major chunk of life, but when it happens is random for us, depending on what stage it was at during our birth, right?
Exactly. So
yeah, it's an interesting topic. It really is. So that's one that I would definitely be looking forward to hearing. Especially because, as I said, I have a vested interest.
Yeah. The reason I thought of this one is I thought that when I looked at my own daughter's chart, it's so funny when you're a parent how you look at your kids' charts, and I recognized that she has a very similar one as mine, like almost like when it went retrograde and then when it will go direct later on in life is about the time that I had her. So hers that turns is about the time of my age when I gave birth to her. So it's kind of interesting. That was like, I want to dive into that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I know we learn more sometimes from our own kids' charts about ourselves, even in a weird way, not to sound myopically selfish or narcissistic, but It's like, oh, look, it's going to happen. Oh, wait, that happened when, I saw something in my son's chart I'm not even going to talk about, but related to me. And I was like, oh, my God, like this is when that's going to happen, because you can tell from the cycles of what happened last time, say the progressed moon conjoined, his moon, Pluto, in Scorpio and Sag.
Yeah, to me, astrology is the gift that keeps on giving if you just let it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I remember in the early days of learning, someone saying you can look at your chart, and every single time you do, you see something new.
Yeah.
And I have to say, after 20 years, studying and about, 12 years of practice, 13 years of practice, that's 100% true. You just never exactly know, right? You could look at it every day. It's not like every day you're going to see something new, but you definitely do. And it's so fascinating to me,
Yeah.
So, Sarah, no, go ahead.
No, I agree. Yes, it just keeps informing you deeper and deeper when you ask questions and go to it.
Yeah. So tell everyone now how they can reach you, how they can keep track of how to sign up for this program, where they can go to look to get more details on the schedule and the presenters, as well as any of your own writings, or you mentioned you have a newsletter, or to book a reading with you. What do people have to do to find all this information?
Yes. So for the event itself, the website is where you can get registered. It's astrologyforhealing.net. And you can just go right there to the registration page, right from the main page. And there's also the speakers on the main page, but it's also in the speaker detail with their bios and the topic of their presentation a little bit more spelled out for you. And all the dates and so forth. And once you are registered or subscribed, well, definitely registered, you will get the links to the live events. If you're subscribed and you're waiting to figure out if you want to do that, that's great too. And if you want to have a reading or be a part of my newsletter or upcoming classes, you can find me at onesagesview.com. And you can sign up, subscribe to my list there if you like to stay informed.
And that's spelled out, right? ONESAGES VIEW.com.
That's correct.
Okay, cool. I like to do that because people would be putting in the number 1 and they'll never find you.
No, that's true. That's true. But my spelling my name is probably worse. So we'll just go with onesagesview.com.
Yeah, trust me, I know. I grew up SHERI when everyone else was SHERRI or RRY, or then they decided I was Stacy or Sharon or Susan or whatever. So
Yeah.
I used to, my maiden name is Horn, and I used to laugh because people would be like, how do you spell it?
Yeah.
Kind of like, but I was just telling my son the other day, I was raised on Staten Island in New York City, which was settled by the Dutch. So when I was like in grammar school, people were like, is that horn with an E? And I would be like, no, like the musical instrument, because we had Van Horns and Vanderbilts and Vanderburgs and all that stuff that, settled the little island that became part of New York City. So it's interesting. All right. So thank you so much. I am really pleased to have you on. And, I am hoping that people check out the event. And do you know just how long is each presentation? And I assume do they have like Q&A time at the end of it?
We have, each presentation is anywhere from 60 minutes to 70 minutes, depending on, running over a little bit sometimes. So we kind of give them that block of time. And Q&A can be tucked in there for about, 5 minutes, 10 minutes or something, depending on the depth of the question to be answered.
Right.
So that's the plan.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate your being here. I would love to talk to you again, have you on again, because you are one of my favorite guests now.
Thank you.
And I do think, again, because it's in your bio, I mean, number one, I love the topic of intuition and psychic capability. And I also, you mentioned sexual abuse, and it's a topic that I think it's interesting for people to know can be seen in the chart, both of those things, because I find that when one has experienced something like abuse of any kind, but particularly sexual abuse, their energies are very porous, and on one hand, but on the other hand, it's a signature of a lot of strength, right? So like, in other words, the healing process is to develop a stronger boundaries, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, so people invade those boundaries, unfortunately, and some of that is karmic, some of that is not, but, or starts with this lifetime. But now we have to heal from that by developing stronger boundaries. And when we do, what we realize is that we're really fucking strong. Pardon me, everyone. But that's my Scorpio side coming out. Yeah. So it's like, that's the gift that I think that you have to bring to people through these kinds of events and through your own kinds of readings, because I can't imagine that you don't draw similar energies to you. I think we all do as practitioners. And that is a gift that is priceless. So I just want to leave everyone with that, because I think the healing that comes from that, from someone who understands it, who can recognize it, and then guide people how to be able to use their past experiences as ways to empower themselves in the future, is, again, just priceless. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for having this event. And thanks to everyone else for joining me here today. I hope you've all found the information presented here helpful as you continue your karmic evolution in this lifetime. And be sure to give me a shout at sherry@karmicevolution.com if you'd like to book my $99 1-hour discounted reading. To join me next week on March 25th for another episode of Karmic Evolutions, Astrologically Speaking, when I'll go live on Facebook with the first in the series of The Truth About Astrology and Your Soul's Karmic Evolution, starting with The Truth About Aries and Your Soul's Karmic Evolution. Till then, may your journey be filled with karmic healing and the joy of greater consciousness. Namaste.
Long ago.
Okay, you're clear.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.